Hello YouTube, my name's Andrew, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking all about the Adventure Engine. We'll be getting the Adventure Engine in Master Duel in about a week, hopefully. And I wanted to spend some time talking about what are the 5 best decks to use this engine. We're also going to kind of overview the engine and talk about what kind of decks can use it, because this is by no means a comprehensive list. There's going to be all kinds of decks using this roughly 10 card engine in their strategy, and I'll explain why. So if you like this kind of video, really appreciate a subscription to the channel or a like on the video. Let's jump right into the first deck. This is a standard adventure engine. I'm going to talk a little bit about what this engine does for people who may not be so familiar. So essentially what you're trying to do is activate Rites of Aramacer, which will give you a 2000 adventurer token. The cost for this is that you can't use the effects of any monster that's normal summoned. So what you're looking for is a deck that doesn't rely on its normal summon effects. You can't like normal summon Alistair and then activate Rites. You can't use Alistair's effect for the entire turn. So what the Water Enchantress does is essentially banish from your hand or graveyard, and she can search for Rites of Aramacer from your deck or graveyard. She can also special summon if you have a token on the field. So this card is almost never bad. It's either an extender or a starter. And then you have the Wandering Griffin Rider, which is a Omni Negate by shuffling itself into the deck, and it can special summon from your hand while you control no monsters or the adventurer token. You can activate Fateful Adventure directly from your deck when you use Rites, and this card lets you search for the Griffin Rider by discarding a card. You can also search for Enchantress if you don't already have your engine started, so this card is not a brick. You do have one like brick in the deck, the Dracoback, the Rideable Dragon. This card though is so good at when you're going second, you can bounce one of your opponent's cards from the field to the hand every single turn, and when it's sent to the graveyard, it re-equips to an adventure token. So you're usually going to activate Rites, activate Fateful directly from your deck, use its effect to search for Griffin, and then you can special summon Griffin, search for Dracoback. You can discard Dracoback if you have a normal summon. The engine just flows so nicely, and you can use Foolish Burial as a starter because you can send Enchantress to the graveyard and then activate her effect. So I'll of course make a follow-up video on this once we actually get the adventure token in Master Duel, and I will be showing exact lists for all of these decks, but I wanted to see all the cards that we're getting just to make sure they're the most accurate. The first deck on this list, however, is going to be Phantom Knights. Phantom Knights have a lot of synergy with the Adventurer token. It's a premier combo deck that will gain access to an Omni Negate on top of its board due to this engine. Also, the Water Enchantress being a level 3 means you can send it off Cherubini, the Ebon Angel, directly from your deck to the graveyard, and your two engines just work perfectly in tandem, allowing you to send the Adventure token, getting your Omni Negate, and if you already have the Adventure token, the Enchantress actually becomes a level 3 extender, exactly what this deck needs. Phantom Knights are very flexible, and some of the boards they put up are extremely daunting, and so this deck is no joke. It will definitely be a top tier contender. Some of its weaknesses though are Nibiru the Primal Being, and yeah, overall it is just slightly less consistent than some of the other decks on this list, so I will put it in the 5th place category. However, this is definitely a great deck, and it is getting buffed by the Adventurer token, so don't take it lightly. Before we move on, I will mention that a lot of Adventurer token decks are greater than 40 cards, depending on what kind of deck you're playing. You're adding some bricks to the deck, being the Griffin Rider and the Rideable Dragon, the Dracoback. So a lot of people opt to play like 45 to 50 cards in these kind of strategies. They're consistent enough, and decks that can use Foolish Burial with their engine are just naturally just better suited for the Adventure deck, because this is another copy of Enchantress, but you can also send a Phantom Knight if you already have Enchantress in rotation. The next deck that will be increasing in power due to the Adventure engine is Rose Dragon Tenyi. Rose Dragon Tenyi is an awesome deck that uses one of the most powerful Adventure engine synergy cards in the game, Red Rose Dragon. Red Rose combos are extremely powerful, and if you look at YCS Charlotte, you'll see some incredible lists of Rose Dragon decks taking advantage of this engine to its fullest extent. This uses the Adventure engine not so much as just for the Omni Negate and leaving them on the board, but rather using them as a free synchro material. This engine gives you a level 4 monster and a level 7 monster with one card, and those are used for a synchro combo in the Red Rose deck. Let's say you open Rights plus Red Rose Dragon. You get the Rights plus the Griffin. You use the Griffin plus the Red Rose Dragon to summon Borrel to Fleur. That gives you an Omni Negate, and then Rose Dragon will summon the Rox Rose from your deck, adding a copy of Basil Rose Shoot. You can then use the Rox Rose Dragon plus the token to make Shooting Riser Dragon, which sends Fairy Tale Snow directly from your deck to the graveyard, and you can use the Basil Rose Shoot to summon back the Rox Rose and go into a full Halqifibrax Auroradon combo. So you're not only setting up Snow and Baron, but you can then also use those materials to maybe make a Yazi, pop the Yazi with the Baron's effect, and summon a Swordsoul from your deck, giving you roughly 3 more interactions. This combo is extremely good, and with Red Rose at 3, if this remains during Adventurer format, it's definitely going to be a top tier deck. This is surely a deck that I will cover on my channel, and so definitely stay tuned if you want to see an updated version of this deck. The next deck that I expect to see a lot of in Master Duel is the Rose Dragon Combo Orient. Now, this is not using the Tenyi cards. This build, piloted by Jesse Cotton and Cody Angelov during YCS Charlotte era, it takes advantage of the natural strengths of the Adventurer cards to give you a consistent engine and the materials you need for Red Rose Dragon. This deck plays a ton of hand traps, since even normal summoning a hand trap is in a lot of times a full combo, since you can use it to make Halqifibrax, tutor the Red Rose from your deck. So this deck plays, what is that, 14 hand traps? That's crazy, right? This build orients towards using the Verte Anaconda rather than using Auroradon as part of your end board, giving you access to Destiny Phoenix Enforcer, maybe a Baron de Fleur, and potentially leaving the Shooting Riser Dragon on the field after sending Snow, making it a level 3, and then you can use it plus the Snow to quick play Synchro into a Black Rose Moonlight Dragon or a Black Rose Dragon, countering the meta pretty effectively. This could also use Artifact Scythe as part of its strategy, and that is probably going to see a lot of play. One card I don't know if we're going to get is Illusion of Chaos. This card is very, very useful. You can basically search it using Dark the Dark Charmer, which I also don't know if we're going to get right away. And overall, the engine works perfectly fine without this, but Magician Souls is a very synergistic card with the Adventure engine, since it leaves up a lot of face-up spells that you can send away for a free Pot of Greed. Yes, this build is going to be definitely very, very good, and it's going to use not only Scythe, but you could also just use this version. Overall, an extremely well-rounded deck that we're definitely going to see start to creep into the meta once the Adventure engine arrives. Next, I want to talk to you about Sunavalon. This is a deck that will be getting a power increase with the Adventure engine. Adding it to this deck gives you an Omni Negate before you normal summon, which is very useful considering how weak this deck is to hand traps. So your normal summon doesn't need its effect at all. You just summon this like vanilla monster. So summoning a Griffin before this has almost no cost, and it's just a really synergistic engine in general. This deck is not yet full power. When the Therion cards come out, it's going to get another power buff, and I believe when the Punk support, giving Dear Note into the deck, actually increases the power level of this deck significantly, since one emergency teleport gives you a Baron de Fleur plus a Sunseed Loki using a Synchron combo. That's pretty cool, and I'll definitely cover it if it all becomes legal in Master Duel. But yeah, this deck puts up one of the craziest boards that you can imagine. Infinite negates. You can just like set up a trap that has negates plus a bunch of monster effects. It's just really good and well-rounded, very consistent considering you only need a 1-card starter. But with the Therion cards missing, the Punk cards missing, it's not yet at its full potential, and this deck will only continue to get better as the game progresses. But I have one more deck to show you in this video. You may have already guessed what it is, but let's jump into the last list. What very well could be the best adventure deck in the upcoming meta is Prank Kid Adventure. This is the first place list from the 1,000-player YCS Charlotte, which is playing 40 cards using Fusion Destiny and the Adventure engine in a Prank Kid deck. You'll notice that in the TCG we only had 1 copy of Meow Moo, and this deck still absolutely dominated the meta, almost reaching tier 0 status with 3 Meow Moo in Master Duel. I can only imagine what kind of terror this deck will cause. The extra deck is extremely flexible. You have a ton of space. As you'll notice, this build even uses super poly targets since they have side deck, and yeah, you're going to be able to easily fit in those extra copies of Meow Moo without much concern. As you'll notice, this deck also plays a very good number of hand traps. What is that, 11 hand traps plus 3 droplets in a 40 card deck, fitting in the entire Adventure engine and a good sized Prank Kid core. It's perfectly synergistic. This deck is absolutely tier 1, and in my opinion will be the best version of Adventurer on release. But I want you guys to not be limited by this list. Definitely consider the strengths of the adventure engine, not using any normal summon effects. If you have a deck that fits that criteria, there's like a lot more that I didn't even mention, like SALAMANGREAT, there's just like Dragon Link, even Sky Striker uses it. You can play with Eldritch. Like there's so many different decks that use this engine. I encourage you to look through your collection and find the decks that most accurately match with the restrictions of the adventure engine and try and come up with something new, because the engine in itself allows a lot of rogue decks to kind of keep up with the tier 1 decks such as SWORDSOUL and Drytron. Those decks aren't going to be able to use the adventure engine, and we will, so it kind of brings our power level up while the tier 1 stays the same. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and maybe got some insight out of it. Let me know in the comment section what you're thinking for adventure engine, and definitely stay tuned with the channel. As soon as they announce adventure engine to be added to the game, I will be making a follow-up video with lists in Master Duel, so that way we know exactly what cards we're getting. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.